If you are interested in watching Naruto fanfiction stories, please help get the channel to 1,000 subscribers. Welcome back everyone. Today, we're continuing with the next part of this series, called What If Goku Remembered the Saiyans? My name is Ash. Please, for me, drop a like and subscribe to the page. Also leave your comments down below. With that, let's begin. Vegeta, already on his feet again, wiped the dirt from his armor with disdain. "Saiyans fight alone," he declared arrogantly. Without a second thought, the proud prince launched himself at Dodoria, throwing a flurry of kicks and punches. Dodoria was ready this time, skillfully dodging most of Vegeta's strikes and returning with his own powerful blows. Vegeta managed to block a few, but Dodoria's strength and size were overwhelming. More hits landed than Vegeta would ever admit. Krillin watched in frustration, his brow furrowing as he let out an exasperated sigh. "Why does he always have to make things difficult?" he muttered. But he wasn't about to just sit back and watch. Krillin charged in, hoping to catch Dodoria off guard like before. But this time, Dodoria saw him coming. With a powerful backhand, he swatted Krillin aside like a fly. The bald warrior was thrown several feet, crashing into the dirt with a painful thud. Dodoria smirked, his focus returning to Vegeta. Seizing the brief distraction, Vegeta gathered his energy into his palm. With a furious shout, he unleashed a massive energy blast straight at Dodoria. The explosion rocked the battlefield, and for a moment, Vegeta thought he had gained the upper hand. But as the smoke cleared, Dodoria stood tall. Though a thin trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth, he wiped it away with a grin. "That all you've got? You caught me off guard, but it wasn't enough. You think you can actually beat me, Prince?" His voice dripped with amusement as he stepped forward, his massive frame moving faster than expected. Before Vegeta could react, Dodoria's fist slammed into his chest with crushing force. The blow sent the Saiyan prince sprawling to the ground, coughing up blood. Vegeta's body ached all over, but Dodoria wasn't done yet. The massive alien planted his foot on Vegeta's chest, pressing down with his full weight. "Now you die!" Dodoria snarled, a cruel grin on his face. Krillin, recovering from his earlier hit, watched in horror. He had no choice now. If he didn't act fast, Vegeta would be finished. Summoning his energy, Krillin raised his hand high above his head. The energy ball formed quickly, glowing with deadly intent as it spun and flattened into a sharp disc. "Destructo Disc!" Krillin shouted, hurling the deadly spinning blade toward Dodoria. Dodoria, too focused on ending Vegeta's life, didn't see the attack coming. The disc sliced through the air, and before the pink brute could react, it cleanly severed his head from his body. Dodoria's massive form crumpled to the ground beside Vegeta, lifeless. Krillin stood there, breathing heavily. "That was close, too close," he whispered, wiping sweat from his brow. Far above, Zarbon observed the scene with growing disbelief. Dodoria, his second in command, a fearsome warrior, was dead, decapitated by a bald little earthling. He tapped his scouter in frustration as it read the power level. 10,000? Zarbon murmured, eyes narrowing. He couldn't believe it. Dodoria had fallen to someone with a power level of only 10,000. No matter, he wouldn't make the same mistake. He wouldn't be caught off guard by such a weakling. From nearby, Raditz sneered up at Zarbon, his voice dripping with defiance. "Looks like your men aren't as tough as you thought." Zarbon's eyes flashed with anger as he twisted Raditz's arm further. The Saiyan winced in pain, but refused to give Zarbon the satisfaction of crying out. "I'll just have to kill you to even the score," Zarbon said coldly. Meanwhile, not far away, Kakarot dodged another energy blast from Kui, the fish-faced alien grunting in frustration as yet another attack failed to hit its mark. How was this possible? He had battled the Saiyan Prince to a draw before, yet now he couldn't even land a single meaningful strike against this warrior. Kakarot's speed was incredible, each movement smooth and precise. Kui's thoughts were interrupted when Kakarot suddenly lunged forward, his fist aiming straight for Kui's head. Kui reacted just in time, raising his arm to block the punch. He grinned for a brief moment, thinking he'd finally caught the Saiyan, but his satisfaction vanished as his fist passed through nothing but an afterimage. "What?" Kui spun around, confused and desperate to figure out where Kakarot had gone. Kui felt a chill run down his spine as Kakarot's voice came from behind him. "I'm tired of playing around with you," the Saiyan said, his tone calm but deadly. Kui spun around just in time to see Kakarot standing with his hands at his side. a ball of blue energy glowing between his palms.
Kamehameha! Kakarot shouted, thrusting his hands forward. The beam of energy shot toward Kui with terrifying speed. Desperately, Kui raised his hands, trying to block the oncoming blast, but the sheer power of the attack was too much. The energy beam pushed him back, his feet digging trenches in the ground as he was forced toward a nearby rock formation. The blast detonated with a thunderous explosion, shaking the earth like a nuclear bomb had just gone off. When the smoke cleared, Kui was still standing, but barely. His armor was cracked, huge chunks missing, and his body was covered in burns. His breaths were ragged, his muscles trembling from the pain, but he wasn't finished yet. "Nice one," Kui growled, blood dripping from his mouth, but not enough. He turned to where Kakarot had been standing, ready to fight back, but the Saiyan was gone.
"Where did you go?" Kui shouted, looking frantically in every direction. "Right here," Kakarot's voice answered from behind, a whisper near his ear. Before Kui could even turn around, Kakarot's open palm slammed into his lower back. A surge of energy shot through Kui's body, blasting a hole straight through his stomach. His eyes widened in shock as he fell to the ground, the life rapidly draining from his body. Krillin stood over Dodoria's lifeless body, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He turned just in time to see Kakarot shoot an energy blast through Kui's midsection, the alien collapsing in a heap. Krillin smirked to himself. "I guess Kakarot doesn't need any help," he muttered. His eyes shifted to Vegeta, who was now shakily getting back to his feet. "I didn't need help either," Vegeta grumbled under his breath, brushing the dust from his armor. His pride was still very much intact, even if his body wasn't. Krillin raised an eyebrow, his frustration bubbling up. "You could just say thank you for saving your life," he shot back, crossing his arms. Before Vegeta could reply, both warriors turned their attention to Zarbon, who was now gathering energy to finish off Raditz. As much as Krillin disliked Raditz, the long-haired Saiyan was now on their side. And, more importantly, Krillin could sense the danger. Zarbon was stronger than his other opponents, and he wouldn't be so easy to take down. Krillin's mind raced. Could he make it in time? King Kai had warned him about using the Kaioken recklessly, especially going above AX2, but Krillin knew he had no other choice. Raditz was only seconds away from death. "Kaioken X3!" Krillin shouted, a red aurora exploding around him as his power level shot through the roof. With newfound speed, Krillin rocketed toward Zarbon, arriving just in time to drive his knee into the alien's face. Zarbon's energy blast, which had been meant for Raditz, went flying harmlessly into the distance as Zarbon himself was sent crashing into the dirt. Krillin landed in a crouch, letting the Kaioken fade before his body could take too much strain. He stood tall, taking a fighting stance, ready to hold his ground against Zarbon's inevitable retaliation. His body was already feeling the effects of the X3 Kaioken. It was risky to push it any further. Raditz, still recovering from his near-death experience, turned to look at the small, bald warrior now standing beside him. He couldn't help but grin. "So I see the Dragon Balls worked after all," Raditz said, impressed. "Thanks for the help, and sorry for killing you." Krillin kept his eyes on Zarbon, who was getting back to his feet, but responded with a curt nod. "You're welcome," he said, his voice tense. "Who are these guys anyway? I thought we were just dealing with a couple of Saiyans." Kakarot, who had just landed beside his brother and childhood friend, answered before Raditz could. "They followed us. I'm pretty sure they're Frieza's men." Raditz, rubbing his arm, confirmed Kakarot's suspicion. "That one there is Zarbon," he said, nodding toward the elegant but dangerous-looking alien. Frieza's top lieutenant, Zarbon, now standing once more, dusted himself off. That hit from the little earthling had hurt far more than it should have. He glared at the group, Kakarot, Raditz, Krillin, and Vegeta, all standing ready to fight. His eyes narrowed as he realized he wouldn't be able to defeat them in his current form. He needed more power. With a low growl, Zarbon's body began to change. His once handsome features twisted and contorted, growing monstrous and grotesque. His muscles bulged, his skin darkened, and his power skyrocketed. Vegeta could only stare in horror as his scouter struggled to read Zarbon's new power level. The numbers kept climbing until the device overheated and exploded right on Vegeta's face. His heart sank. How could Zarbon be this strong? The realization hit Vegeta like a ton of bricks. If Frieza's lieutenant was this powerful, what chance did he have against Frieza himself? It seemed hopeless. Kakarot's expression darkened, as he felt Zarbon's rising power. He turned to the others, his voice steady but serious. "We'll take him together." Without waiting for a reply, Kakarot charged at Zarbon, his fists flying. Zarbon dodged Kakarot's first punch with ease, retaliating with a brutal fist to the Saiyan's stomach. Kakarot gasped in pain, blood splattering from his mouth as the blow landed with crushing force. Before Zarbon could follow up, Raditz rushed in, unleashing a series of punches and kicks at the monstrous alien. Zarbon, however, was unfazed, blocking Raditz's strikes effortlessly. With a mocking laugh, he drove an elbow into Raditz's face, sending him staggering back.
"Kaioken X3!" Krillin shouted, joining the fray. His fist connected with Zarbon's face, the force sending the alien flying backward. But Zarbon quickly corrected himself in midair, shooting back toward Krillin with incredible speed. The alien unleashed a flurry of attacks, each one faster and more powerful than the last. Even with the X3 Kaioken, Krillin was barely able to block the blows. "If this keeps up, I won't last much longer." Just when it seemed like Zarbon would overpower him, Kakarot appeared, attacking from behind. The two warriors fought side by side, their combined strength beginning to break through Zarbon's defenses. But then, without warning, Krillin felt his body start to fail. The Kaioken aura flickered and then vanished as his power dropped sharply. Zarbon didn't hesitate. He seized the opening, driving a powerful fist into Krillin's stomach. Krillin's eyes widened in shock as the air was knocked from his lungs, and he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. "Kakarot!" Raditz called out as he regrouped with his brother. "Remember the moonball technique? It might be our best shot." Kakarot frowned. "Last time you lost control and nearly destroyed everyone around you," he reminded his brother. "I don't think it'll be necessary. If we work together with Vegeta, we can overpower him." Raditz shot Kakarot a skeptical look. "Vegeta doesn't play well with others," he muttered. Their conversation was abruptly cut short as Zarbon slammed his fist into Raditz's gut, following it up with a sharp elbow to his face. The Saiyan warrior staggered, blood pouring from his mouth. Zarbon moved swiftly, grabbing Raditz's tail before Kakarot could react. With a sadistic grin, Zarbon yanked hard, tearing the tail off in one clean motion. Raditz screamed in agony. Zarbon grinned wickedly as he stood over Raditz, the Saiyan's tail lying limp in his hand. "You won't be transforming now," Zarbon sneered, his laughter cutting through the dry desert air. Tossing the severed tail aside like trash, he turned his attention back to Kakarot, who was already charging at him, fists ready. Kakarot swung a punch at Zarbon, but the alien dodged effortlessly. In retaliation, Zarbon aimed a powerful kick at Kakarot's midsection, but his attack hit nothing but air. It was just an afterimage. The real Kakarot appeared behind him, hands raised and glowing with energy. He unleashed a blast aimed straight at Zarbon's back, but the alien swatted the attack aside like it was nothing. Before Kakarot could react, Zarbon grabbed him by the leg. With a smirk, Zarbon swung Kakarot around in a wide arc and slammed him face first into the hard desert ground. The impact sent up a cloud of dust, and before Kakarot could even recover, Zarbon landed on top of him, his heavy boot pressing painfully into Kakarot's back. With a swift, cruel yank, Zarbon tore off Kakarot's tail, rendering him powerless to transform as well. Kakarot groaned in pain, his body aching from the brutal assault, but Zarbon wasn't done. His eyes shifted to Vegeta, who was still frozen in shock. The Saiyan prince had been watching the whole scene unfold, his pride shattered as he realized just how outmatched they were. Zarbon charged at Vegeta, driving his elbow into the prince's face with brutal force, sending Vegeta hurtling through the air. Before Vegeta could even register the blow, Zarbon was on him, delivering a relentless series of punches and kicks as the prince tumbled helplessly through the air. Vegeta finally crashed into the ground with a bone-shaking thud. Dazed and barely able to move, he struggled to get up, but Zarbon grabbed him by the tail and pulled hard, ripping it clean off. "Now we don't have to worry about any giant apes," Zarbon taunted, laughing cruelly. Vegeta coughed up blood as he lay on the ground, utterly humiliated. He'd lost his tail, his symbol of power. The thought was unbearable, but before he could even reflect on the shame, Zarbon was on him again, pummeling him mercilessly. Blow after blow landed on Vegeta's already broken body,
each one more painful than the last.
"Stop it!" Kakarot's voice rang out, strained but full of defiance. He was standing once again, battered and bruised, his clothes torn to shreds, but his spirit was unbroken. He stood tall, hand outstretched, his fierce eyes locked on Zarbon.
Zarbon chuckled, not even bothering to look up from his merciless beating of Vegeta. Or what? Kakarot's expression darkened. Or you'll die. Zarbon finally stopped, standing tall over Vegeta's crumpled form. He threw his head back and laughed. Big talk from such a weakling. But Zarbon's laughter was cut short as Raditz, recovered and furious, appeared out of nowhere and drove his knee into Zarbon's face with all the force he could muster. Zarbon was sent flying, and before he could regain control, Kakarot was already there. With incredible speed, Kakarot's fist drove into Zarbon's gut, doubling him over in pain. He followed up with a series of punches and kicks, using the advantage Raditz had given him. For a brief moment, it looked like Zarbon was on the ropes, the combined assault of the two brothers finally breaking through his defenses. But the moment didn't last. With a roar, Zarbon regained his composure and fired a blast of energy directly at Kakarot at point-blank range. The explosion sent Kakarot flying back, skidding across the ground as Zarbon followed him, delivering a relentless barrage of punches and kicks that left the Saiyan no room to recover. Far away, Bardock, who had been lying in the dust, barely conscious, opened his eyes to the sight of his father being beaten into the ground. His heart raced, and he clenched his fists. He had to do something, anything, but what could he do against a monster like Zarbon? Then it hit him. He remembered the technique his father had taught him long ago, the moon ball. It was risky, but it was the only chance they had. Summoning every ounce of his energy, Bardock raised his hand toward the sky. A glowing ball of energy formed in his palm. "Moon ball!" he shouted, hurling it into the air. The glowing sphere hovered high above them, illuminating the battlefield with an eerie light. Bardock's heart raced as he stared up at the ball. His body trembled, and his breathing grew ragged. His pulse quickened, and soon his body began to change. His face elongated into a snout, his teeth growing sharp, and blue fur sprouted across his body. In seconds, Bardock's body expanded and grew until he stood as a massive, fearsome blue Uzaru, towering over Zarbon. The massive ape growled, its eyes glowing with rage. With a roar, Bardock unleashed a devastating energy blast from his mouth. The sheer power of the attack sent Zarbon flying through the air, the alien barely able to control his trajectory. Bardock, now fully transformed into his giant ape form, didn't waste a second. He leapt into the air after Zarbon, swinging a massive fist that collided with the alien, sending him crashing into the ground with bone-breaking force. Zarbon groaned in pain, his body aching from the assault. How could he be losing? He righted himself, struggling to stand, and shot a blast of energy at the Uzaru. The attack hit Bardock's shoulder, causing the massive ape to roar in pain, but it wasn't enough to stop him. Before Zarbon could press the attack further, Kakarot appeared once again, this time driving his knee into Zarbon's back. Zarbon twisted in midair and retaliated with a fierce punch to Kakarot's chest, sending the Saiyan flying away once more. Zarbon stood there panting, his eyes flicking between the massive blue Uzaru and Kakarot, who was struggling to get back up. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had been winning, and now everything was falling apart. "Double Sunday!" Raditz bellowed, his voice filled with desperation as he channeled every last ounce of his energy into his signature attack. The twin beams of light shot forth, tearing through the air with terrifying speed. Zarbon, who had been preoccupied fighting Kakarot and Bardock, was caught completely off guard. The attack struck him with full force, sending him spiraling away from his opponents. His confident sneer wiped off his face as he crashed hard into the ground. Kakarot seized the opportunity. Me, he, he yelled, his hands thrust forward as the brilliant blue beam of energy erupted from his palms. Zarbon, disoriented, turned just in time to see the attack speeding toward him. His eyes widened in panic, but it was too late. The blast slammed into him like a speeding freight train, smashing him into the earth with a tremendous crash that shook the battlefield. Groaning in pain, Zarbon slowly struggled to his feet, his transformation already beginning to fade. His once elegant form now reverted back to his normal state. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth as he clutched his side. This is becoming more troublesome than I thought, he muttered, gritting his teeth. But before Zarbon could fully recover, a massive fist smashed into him, sending him crashing back into the ground. This time, the fist didn't let go. It wrapped around him, squeezing with immense force. Zarbon gasped as the pressure built, his ribs creaking under the grip. The source of the attack, a massive, furious ape, roared down at him. Its red eyes gleamed with fury, and its grip tightened further. Zarbon's mind raced, his body screaming in pain. He could feel his bones starting to crack. How? Zarbon wheezed, his mind struggling to comprehend. He had made sure to remove the tails of every Saiyan he encountered. Then it hit him. The blue-haired boy, the one from earlier in the battle. He had assumed the child was dead. Clearly, he had been wrong. Kakarot flew up into the sky, surveying the scene below. His son, now in his great ape form, was crushing Zarbon mercilessly. I have to end this before Zarbon finds a way out, Kakarot muttered. Acting quickly, he raised his hand, mimicking one of his friend's moves. Destructo Disc, he shouted. The energy disc formed rapidly in his hand and shot forward with deadly precision. It zipped through the air and sliced clean through Zarbon's neck, severing his head in one clean motion. As Zarbon's lifeless body slumped to the ground, Kakarot wasted no time. He cupped his hands to his side, concentrating his energy once more. Kamehameha, he shouted, firing a beam of energy toward Bardock's artificial moon. The beam hit the glowing sphere, shattering it into countless shards of light. With the moon ball gone, massive form began to shrink back down. The boy reverted to his normal state, unconscious from the strain of the transformation. In another part of the battlefield, Kui stumbled into his spaceship, his body battered and bruised, his vision blurred, and each breath he took felt like a stab to the chest. He knew he was dying without medical help. Still, he had something more valuable than his own life: information. With trembling hands, he hit the controls, and the ship slowly lifted off. As the stars stretched out before him, Kui's mind was focused on one thing: Lord Frieza. The Saiyans had mentioned something about Dragon Balls and bringing someone back from the dead. That phrase had triggered a distant memory, the legend of the magical balls of Namek. If the Namekian warrior he saw on the battlefield was anything to go by, the legend must be true. Frieza would want to hear about this, and maybe, just maybe, delivering this news would be enough to keep him alive. Back on the ground, Kakarot looked up just in time to see Kui's spaceship speeding into the sky. His eyes narrowed in frustration. Damn, one of them got away. He's heading straight for Frieza, Vegeta growled, his voice cold and accusing. You were too soft. You should have finished him.
I didn't let him live on purpose, Kakarot snapped. I thought he was dead. Doesn't matter now, Raditz chimed in, shaking his head. Frieza would have sent someone to investigate anyway when none of his men returned.
That's fine, Vegeta said with a smirk. Once I'm healed, I'll take care of Frieza myself. Krillin, standing nearby, crossed his arms, concern etched on his face. So, what do we do now? Raditz glanced over at him. We need to find the Dragon Balls, your Earth ones. We can wish back Nappa and the others. We'll need as many fighters as possible to face Frieza. Kakarot sighed, shaking his head. We can't. Piccolo's dead, and when he died, the Dragon Balls vanished too. He and Kami were linked, and Kami's gone now. Without him, the Dragon Balls are useless. Vegeta's eyes narrowed, intrigued for the first time in the conversation. The Namek?
Kakarot turned to him, confused. What about him?
Raditz answered for him. Piccolo was a Namekian, wasn't he? Vegeta's expression darkened as he muttered to himself. So the legends are true. What legends? Kakarot asked, sensing something important. The legend of the magic balls of Namek, Vegeta replied, his voice low and dangerous. Whoever gathers all 7 of them is granted any wish they desire. That sounds like our Dragon Balls, Krillin exclaimed. Raditz nodded. If the Dragon Balls on Earth were made by a Namek, it makes sense there'd be more of them on their home planet. And I'll use them to wish for immortality, Vegeta declared, suddenly whirling around and making a beeline for his ship. Wait, we need to heal first, Raditz shouted after him. No time, Vegeta called back, his voice filled with excitement. I can almost taste my immortality. And with that, the Saiyan Prince blasted off into space before anyone could stop him. Raditz cursed under his breath. We can't let him get immortality. It'll go straight to his head. Why not? Kakarot asked, genuinely puzzled. Wouldn't he help us fight Frieza?
Raditz shook his head. If Vegeta becomes invincible, he might defeat Frieza, but he'd become worse than him. He wouldn't stop there. Then, we have to follow him, Kakarot said, determination burning in his eyes. We can't let him make that wish. Raditz nodded, but his voice grew serious. And we need to be ready for the possibility of running into Frieza. If Vegeta figured out the Dragon Balls, it won't take long for someone in Frieza's army to put it together too. Let's regroup at Capsule Corp and plan from there, Kakarot suggested. He reached into a small pouch tied to his waist. I've only got 3 senzu beans left. He tossed one to Krillin, then knelt down and placed another into Tien's mouth. Finally, he gave the last one to Bardock, who was still unconscious. You guys need these more than I do, he said quietly.
So you want to go to Namek and gather their Dragon Balls? Bulma asked, her tone skeptical. Yeah, Kakarot replied, having just finished explaining everything to her. We need to stop Vegeta before he can wish for immortality. Bulma crossed her arms, deep in thought. Well, with the ships Frieza's men left behind, we should be able to get there. But there's a problem. Raditz frowned. What's the problem? Frieza's men would have booby-trapped their ships, Bulma said, matter-of-factly. Kakarot nodded, thinking it through. That leaves us with 3 ships, right? Not exactly, Bulma replied. My dad and I have been working on your ships. We've removed the engines and we're building one bigger ship. It's almost ready. Raditz's eyes widened. How soon can we leave? It'll be ready in 2 days, Bulma said. The second ship won't be done for at least a week. Kakarot raised an eyebrow. Why is the second one taking so long? Bulma grinned proudly. We've been making some upgrades. It'll be faster, and I've been installing an improved gravity room into it. Kakarot's face lit up with excitement. How much better is it? It can go up to 100 times Earth's gravity, Bulma said proudly, arms crossed, her lips curling into a smirk. That should keep the 2 of you satisfied for a while, at least. Raditz, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, raised an eyebrow. How long until we'll have more senzu beans?
About 10 days, Bulma replied. I've had some success replicating the plants that grow them, but I can't make them grow any faster than Korin can.
Kakarot nodded, thinking, all right, when the first ship is ready, we'll send Krillin and Tien to Namek. Raditz and I will stay behind until the second ship and the senzu beans are ready. Then we'll follow. I should be able to handle Vegeta if I run into him, Krillin chimed in confidently. I'm getting the hang of the Kaioken. It's not as hard as I thought it would be. Kakarot looked at him seriously. Vegeta's still as beat up as we are. He'll need time to recover, but when he does, he'll be stronger than ever. If we're lucky, we won't have to confront him right away. We just need to find the Dragon Balls before he does, and we've got the Dragon Radar on our side. And that's it for today's episode, guys. If you watch to the end, then that could be an indication that you enjoy the series. So please leave a like on the video. Thank you and take care.